One of the big problems that we see day after day is that many people try to start an online business without really understanding how the internet works. The good news is that by participating in the challenge, you'll gain a big advantage over those people who are starting from scratch and trying to figure out everything for themselves. In this video, we'll be looking at a number of important concepts relating to keyword research. These include understanding what online markets really are, understanding niches and how they relate to markets, and then we'll take a look at the role of keywords and why they're so very important. When you first start exploring the world of internet marketing, you'll often hear people talking about different online markets. The best definition of a market is that it is a community of people who share a common interest in a particular subject or activity. Often this community has its own language, which is made up of terms and acronyms that only make sense to other members of the community. The easiest way to understand this view of a market is to take a look at some examples. The brides-to-be market is made up of women who are currently planning a wedding. Their area of interest is, of course, weddings. And some examples of the language that is used by members of this market include FH, which is an abbreviation for future husband, FMIL, which stands for future mother-in-law, and MOH, which stands for maid or matron of honour. The next example we'll look at is the online gaming market, which is made up of people who enjoy playing computer games with others over the internet. For example, their area of interest might be playing World of Warcraft, which is a popular multiplayer game. And some examples of the language that is specific to this market include Azurgrush, AOE, and Squishy. And finally, let's take a look at the golfers market. Their area of interest is, of course, golf, and some examples of their community-specific language include a Texas wedge, a mid-marshy, and an apron. Once you understand this concept of a market as a community with its own internal language, you'll quickly realise that there are hundreds and thousands of different markets out there waiting to be explored. Now let's move on and take a look at the concept of niches. Within every market you'll find multiple niches. A niche is a subset of a market that relates to a specific topic. The easiest way to understand the distinction between a market and a niche is to take a look at an example. Members of the brides-to-be market will be interested in a wide range of topics that relate to weddings. These include wedding flowers, wedding rings, wedding photography, bonbonnieres, reception venues, and wedding dresses. Each of these topics can be thought of as a niche that will be of specific interest to members of the brides-to-be market. In the challenge, we take things a step further and drill down to find what we call micro-niches. Micro-niches are niches within niches. For example, within the wedding photography niche, a micro-niche might be wedding portrait photography. The main reason we look for micro-niches is that there is generally less competition in micro-niches, which gives us a much better chance of obtaining a front page ranking in Google. Now let's take a look at keywords and how they relate to market niches. Keywords are the words or phrases that members of a market type into a search engine in order to explore a particular niche. For example, Sarah and Karen are both members of the brides-to-be market. When Sarah sits down at her computer to explore the wedding photography niche, she enters the keyword phrase wedding photography tips. Google then returns a list of sites that contain tips for getting great wedding photos. When Karen uses Google to explore the wedding photography niche, she enters the keyword phrase wedding photography pricing. Naturally, she receives a different set of results to Sarah because her keyword phrase has a different focus. The first thing to notice here is that Sarah and Karen are both exploring the same market niche. However, they generate a very different view of that niche based on the keyword phrase they enter into Google. A great way to think of keyword phrases is that each phrase is literally a key that unlocks a specific door to provide access to a market niche.
The second important thing to note is that the number of people using each keyword phrase to explore a niche varies greatly. For example, on average, 217 people per day use the keyword phrase wedding photography tips to explore the wedding photography niche. In contrast, only 5 people use the phrase wedding photography pricing to access the niche. This means that each keyword phrase has a value based on the number of people who are using it to access a particular niche. The keyword phrase wedding photography tips generates more traffic to the wedding photography niche than the phrase wedding photography pricing. As a result, the phrase wedding photography tips is considered to be a more valuable keyword phrase than the phrase wedding photography pricing. Now that we've discussed online markets, market niches, and the role of keywords, let's take a look at why these concepts are so important in the real world. A few years ago, the CEO of Noble Samurai, Eugene Ware, myself, and Ed Dale created the Internet Eagles project. For 12 months, we worked with 3 complete beginners to help them create online businesses from scratch. All 3 of them worked extremely hard to create their own ebooks, and they all followed exactly the same marketing process. However, the results they achieved varied dramatically. The first Internet Eagle instantly began earning thousands of dollars per month. The second Internet Eagle basically broke even. And the final Internet Eagle lost money each and every month. What we learned from this experience is that when it comes to internet marketing, success is not necessarily achieved by the person with the best product or the person who works the hardest. In fact, it takes the same amount of time and effort to build an unsuccessful business online as it does to build a successful business. The biggest factors that determine whether you succeed or fail are number 1, the market you choose, and number 2, the keywords you target. If you get these 2 factors right, your online business may produce an income stream that can completely transform your life. However, if you get one of these factors wrong, you'll probably join the large number of people who make virtually no income online. In our experience, the main reason people fail is that they do not spend the time up front to do the market research necessary to check if their business idea is viable. Instead, they rush in, they select a random niche, they target random keywords, or worse, they don't target keywords at all, and then they just hope for the best. The people who succeed online take a very different approach. They research markets carefully, they identify profitable areas, they target specific keywords, and they follow a proven plan. In this video, we looked at what online markets are and defined them as communities of people who share an interest in a particular area and often have their own internal language. We then saw that within each market there are many niches which relate to specific topics of interest to members of a market. We also took this to the next level and identified that there are niches within niches which we call micro-niches. Next, we looked at the role of keywords and found that they are the keys to unlocking a niche or micro-niche. We also saw that different keyword phrases have different values depending on the amount of traffic they generate. And finally, we discussed the importance of keywords and found that choosing the right market and targeting the right keywords are 2 of the biggest factors in determining the success or failure of your online business. Today's action step is to spend some time exploring online markets to try and identify 3 examples of the market, niche, micro-niche hierarchy that I've described in this video. For example, you might explore the health and fitness market and discover the muscle gain niche. And within this niche, you might identify the muscle gain nutrition micro-niche. Don't worry too much about numbers at the moment. Just get used to the process of drilling down from a market to a niche and from a niche to a micro-niche. Researching and writing down 3 examples
will give you a good idea of how this process works.